feel like Kobe in the fourth quarter.
This is the Dane Moore NBA podcast, and we are brought to you by Prize Picks. Coming at you Tuesday morning, it's November 25th, and we are recording this episode immediately following the Wolves' loss in Sacramento on Monday evening. Woo! I'll be joined by Kyle Theige here in a minute to talk all about another Wolves meltdown. But before we get started, we'll let you know that this episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Let's do a couple picks from the Thursday slate of NFL games because that's what's on everybody's mind right now. It is this loaded slate of Thanksgiving Day games. On Thanksgiving, give me Amon-Ra St. Brown to score a touchdown against the Packers. His number is set at more or less than 0.5 touchdowns scored. We'll take that one more than. And then for the night game, Ravens-Bengals, let's go with Chase Brown to have more than 59.5 rushing yards. There's an awesome slate of games on Thursday in the NFL. So if you want to try some daily fantasy on Thanksgiving, do it over at Prize Picks. If you don't yet have a Prize Picks account, all you got to do is put in the promo code DANE when you sign up, and you will receive $50 in lineups when you play your first $5 lineup. That's prizepicks.com or the Prize Picks app using promo code DANE when you create your account. All right, Wolves Kings talk with Kyle coming up next. Let's do this. All right, we are now joined by Kyle Theige, and we're recording this immediately following the Wolves' loss in Sacramento on Monday night. We're going to get into the details here, but my apologies if we missed some sort of detail from the unraveling that happened in the fourth quarter and overtime. But Kyle, I think the plan here is just that we kind of work our way through this meltdown like Jason and I did on Monday morning when talking about the loss in Phoenix from over the weekend. I was not expecting that this is the podcast that we were going to be doing this evening, but I'm ready. Let's do it. Where would you like to begin?
Well, we're sure as shit not going to miss any post-game quotes. That's for sure, because there's no one at the game again.
That's just going to be a thing all year, though.
Yeah, I know. It was imperative that they lost that game, to be completely honest. Like that was, I will say, I have an Uber scheduled for 4.5 hours from now. So as soon as I realized that we were doing a pod after the game, I was like, I bet you this goes into overtime. Surprise, surprise. They scored 2 points, I think, in the last 3:30 to blow a 10-point lead off the heels of I thought the Phoenix game was the second worst loss of 2025. Nothing will ever top that Bucks game. But I think after they blew that Bucks game last season, no Dame, no Giannis, they kind of found themselves again. They didn't find themselves tonight. The only reason they had a lead throughout that game is because the Kings are terrible. And that tells you how bad the Wolves were. That was this team. This is the team that's in trouble. And I am the guy that's like, hey, it's a long season. It's a marathon, but their running form is not going to work. And there's going to have to be I joked about this after the game, but like probably a players only meeting. I'd probably hold off on that until after you get stomped by OKC. We can preview that later. There's no reason to have a come to Jesus moment and then go lose by 35. But this is a team that I think is all of a sudden in trouble. And you can look at the box score. You can look at the two best players being minus 12, each of them, against a Kings team that's not that good, doesn't shoot threes. A coach who just decided that he's not going to play the young guys anymore. And the young guys who decided we can't score, so we can't really give our coach anything. And when Jalen Clark gets an opportunity to sub in for a defensive stop, what we all wanted against Phoenix, kind of double loses them the game. So the Minnesota Timberwolves will wake up on, I guess, Tuesday morning, 10-7, should be 12-5. And I do think they are a team right now that is in crisis.
Yeah, I mean, it was a brutal close to the game. And to do that 2 games in a row, if it's not making you have significantly bigger questions about this team than we had, 4 or 5 days ago, then yeah, out of touch. We've been doing this thing sort of all season of what exactly is this team, the whole 10-0 against teams with losing records, 0-5 with teams with winning records. And it was just like, well, they haven't got the opportunity to play these guys. They haven't been tested. They got tested by Phoenix and Sacramento these last 2 games, and their like mettle was proven to not be there. in both of the games. You mentioned the two best players, who I think you're referring to as Edwards and Randall, being big negatives in this game. I want to start with the moment that they checked back into the game in the fourth quarter. Thought it was weird how long they were out at the beginning of the fourth quarter. We could talk about Terrence Shannon Jr. being back and Dillingham and Clark still being in the rotation. So it's a 10-man rotation. When you add another body to the rotation, the whole rotation shifts up. We don't often see the Wolves play with neither Randall or Edwards on the floor, but to start the second quarter and to start the fourth quarter, both of those guys were out. And in both of those instances, the offense was just, non-existent. They come back in, they're up 93-85 with 5.5 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. And that was what was supposed to put, the Kings away. And it didn't. In that time, kind of shortly after Edwards and Randall check into the game, the Kings go on a 10-0 run. There's like 3 minutes left to go in regulation. That gets it, back to even. And they, I guess from that point on in regulation, kind of play to a draw with the Kings and send it to overtime. Again, we're recording this right afterwards, but from the end of that regulation piece where the first meltdown of the night happened, what sticks out to you most there?
I'm really glad you want to start there. I just want to run it back quick to start of the fourth quarter. It's 82-77 Minnesota. And I would imagine I don't have the 5-man lineup in front of me, but I know it wasn't Julius and Ant, right?
Julius and Ant. It was Gobert, Reed. Gobert, Reed, McDaniels, DiVincenzo, and Conley. And it was basically the same group to start the second quarter again with both of those guys out, except it was Dillingham instead of Conley in the second quarter. But yeah, Gobert, Reed, McDaniels, DiVincenzo. Randall or Edwards. Sorry.
So the two best players start the fourth quarter on the bench. And you said you were shocked at how late they came in. I was too. I saw a lot of people tweeting that, hey, you can't go that long without Reed or Randall on the court. I just want to reiterate.
Edwards or Randall. Yeah. I keep doing that too.
Let's reset. They're up 5 to start the fourth quarter, and their two best players are on the bench. They sub in 7 minutes later, and they're up 8. That 5-man unit without Ant and without Randall got the lead up to 12. So save me from the Finch fucked it up by not having one of his two best players out there. Now, I think Finch fucked it up 6 other times later in the game, but that 5-man group, a couple starters and a couple bench guys actually played pretty good basketball. And they handed off an 8-point lead to Ant and Julius when they got back on the court. And then it just got mucky. And there was a lot. I mean, again, I know Ant finishes with back-to-back 40-point games, and it should be a celebration based on what we talked about on Friday, right? And the article that Jace wrote. And instead, their inability to close games and their inability to even get good shots. I'm kind of just scrolling through the play-by-play here, but yeah, they come in, they're up 8. It kind of dwindles away. The one that really stood out to me as you get to the end of the fourth quarter, before we even talk about overtime, they foul DeMar DeRozan with 34.4 seconds left. They're up 2. He makes them both because he's 100% free throw shooter in my career watching him play. 34.5 seconds left on the clock. I'm pretty sure 79.5% of coaches in the league take a timeout there to set up a quick 2-for-1. They don't do that. They let Ant dribble the ball up. He runs no action. He gets to the left kind of slot, pump fakes, and then takes a running long 2 banker that has no chance of going in. I think Alan Horton said at some point tonight during the game, Ant was 3 for 10 on the season on bank shots. So again, the coach needs to, at that point, and we can spiral here now into not having, in my opinion, a point guard out there to get them into good set. No one out there was an adult. No one on the bench was an adult. And these losses happen. Like, I do want to say, like, I'm a little riled up. Like, these losses do happen. They rarely happen back to back. Like, they rarely happen where both games. I mean, again, like, this team should be 12-5. They should have been able to close. I mean, they're not even just losing games because they're outplayed. They're losing games because they completely melt down in the last 3.5 minutes. They have no idea what to do. They don't have a sense of urgency. The highlight to me of this game that showed the difference between one organization or one team and the other one was Malik Monk diving out of bounds to save a ball. I don't see who does that on this team right now. Who's diving for loose balls? I know Dante tried to save that one ball, but then he threw it away and it was kind of sloppy. But yeah, man, whether it be Ant, I mean, you and I didn't get to do a pod after the Phoenix game, whether it be Ant, whether it be Julius, whether it be Finch, those three guys to me are the head of this snake. And they let their team down on Friday and they let their team down on Monday.
It does. It's kind of like indicative of a bigger like macro thing, right? Where we're talking this whole like they need a point guard situation, right? And they need a point guard because those three aren't doing what they need to be doing to execute games in situations where you do feel like you need more control, you need more competence, you need to take all the precautions to not unravel. And it seems like as a trio in tandem together, when these games have been on the line, Finch, Edwards, and Randall have all kind of let them down. Now, I will say, you said no point guard on the floor, which is true. When there was 30, you said with 34 seconds left in the game when they tied it up at 101. I did have it down as noteworthy that they had Conley out there. There's 3 minutes left in the game, and the group that's out on the floor is the old starters, right? Conley instead of DiVincenzo. And so Finch does go to Conley, I'm assuming, for some of this control and stuff that we're talking about, not having been there in Phoenix or feeling like they needed. Then with 1 minute left in the game is when Finch brought DiVincenzo back in for Conley there. I don't think the point guard presence is or is not the solution, though, right? Like the solution is Edwards and Randall and Finch being able to handle these situations together as a trio. And that's something obviously that they haven't done in these last two games, but we do have historical precedent of this being an issue with this group. This has been a team that's struggled in clutch time consistently over the course of the Anthony Edwards and Chris Finch era, and that hasn't been solved by the presence of Julius Randle. And oftentimes he contributes to it being exacerbated as he did, tonight. I'm thinking ahead now to overtime and the turnover he had there right at the end of the game, just silly turnovers. I mean, it's not just those three. It's Jaden had a terrible turnover in overtime there. Rudy had that rebound and pass to the other team issue. Like, this group collectively does not appear to know how to manage themselves in these times, or it's just very hard to like bank on them being able to manage themselves. I know the next game is Oklahoma City, but if it's clutch time on Saturday against Boston, a 500 team, it's hard for me to have faith in the Wolves being able to out execute even a mediocre team, or even maybe a below average team like the Kings, or the Suns are having a good year, but it's not a special group. Like, it seems that most teams would out execute the Wolves right now with the game on the line. And I don't think that is just going off of these two games, which clearly indicate that, but a pattern of how this team manages or mismanages the end of the game, from the head coach down to the players. I mean, at this point, this is just way too much of a trend. Like, nobody's blameless. There's stuff we got to put on Finch here that you're talking about. Timeouts, and it's obvious we got to put stuff on Edwards and Randall as well.
And can we go back to the point guard stuff a little bit? Because that's been something I've been texting you about, and I just completely was wrong. So I appreciate you pointing that out.
I mean, with the minute left, there was no point guard on the floor.
Yeah, and maybe now this has dovetailed into a different conversation. Like, when I think about having a point guard on the floor, I mean, Jace nailed this today when he did the pod with him earlier today, when he was like, you can have a point guard on the floor, but if he's not going to demand the ball or have the ball, he's just another guy, right?
Yeah, because when Mike was out there in those 3 minutes, where was Mike starting? Where was Mike starting that possession? In the corner.
So then it's like, if we're going to do the blame pie, like, maybe Mike gets a little bit of it, or maybe Chris Finch just needs to call an action where it's just like, hey, Mike has the ball, and then we're going to get Ant off a curl or something.
When they were calling those plays and running that stuff at the beginning of the fourth quarter.
when
Before
Ant and
Edwards
Julius
and
were on the
Randall's
bench.
exactly.
And I just want to.
Yeah, pick and
This
roll.
is the
Yep,
pod.
yep.
This is the pod because this is it for the week. And this one's going to let in everyone's queue for the next 5-6 days. It's going to get a lot of listens. But this is the moment to talk about it because I'm very pro Chris Finch. I really like watching Anthony Edwards play. And I think Julius Randle has been the MVP of the season. Those three, to me, are light years ahead of everyone else in terms of blame for the last 72 hours of basketball. But so, like, if you want to just, pull a name out of a hat, we can talk about him. But I mentioned that Malik Monk thing earlier where he dove out of bounds to save the ball. Okay. I want to focus just on the players on the court for a second, and then we can talk about the lack of timeouts and the coach. Ant goes to the line with 3:37 left and gets 2 free throws. 6 seconds later, Malik Monk gets a 28-foot 3-point attempt on a transition 3. What do you want the coach to do? 6 seconds after Ant makes a free throw on a made free throw, the Kings had a transition 3. God forbid Malik Monk missed it. But again, it happened, I think, the next time Ant got to the line.
They don't know who they're matched up with. They don't know who they were guarding. You could see it. Like, I mean,
but okay, like,
why do they not know?
The coach should be, telling them, but like at some point, and I have 100 things I want to criticize Chris Finch about. At some point, we have to put some of the onus on the 5 guys that are on the floor. If I'm Ant and I'm at the free throw line, and everyone has to dap me up because that's like religion in the NBA, right? I make it, everyone touches my hand. At some point on the first make, I'm like, hey, Malik's in the corner back there. Like, who's going to pick him up? Is it Dante? You watch this team enough, and I think this starts to come through a little bit more on like a second rewatch or whatever, like the next morning. They'll tell you probably they talk a lot. They don't always talk a lot. Like, there's not a ton of communication always going on between, whether it be Julius and Jaden or Julius and Rudy. Like, they might say there is, but those are just little moments where it's like you build the lead to 7, and then you give the only Zach LaVine. You give the only player on the Kings who's a remote threat from 3 an opportunity to lick his chops, and he misses it. But then he kind of got into a rhythm after that. They never forced Malik Monk left. They never really made it hard for Sacramento to get away from their spots. DeMar DeRozan, once he caught a rhythm, like you knew the game was over in the fourth quarter. But it's just like, if we're going to focus on the players for a second, and then we can get to the coach. At some point, like, who is the person that steps up? And I kept saying point guard. And that's why I'm glad you kind of put me in my place. I guess now I'm looking for, fuck a point guard and fuck a lead guard. Who's like the leader on the court? Because I don't really know who it is. And these are now
in those times we don't know. Yeah, right.
Do they know?
Times we don't know. I don't. Well, I think it's supposed to be Ant, and Ant has like. What's weird is Ant has some like really positive flurries in these times, right? Like,
he's been awesome.
8 straight points. But it stops. It's like when he's scoring, it's great. Created, got to the basket, finished this impressive move, impressive take, something they needed. But the bad possessions are so bad, that we're getting to this point of like, and it's kind of the same with Julius too. High highs, low lows. So when the game is close and there's under 3 minutes left in the game, and it's a possession and the ball's in one of their hands, or a decision is to be made by one of those, it's just this risk, right? Like, it could go be a bucket, or they could pass it to the other team and it's 2 points the other direction. There's no control. It just feels so nothing feels bankable, in those times. And then what starts playing in our head is like the laugh track of like what's happened previously, and you start kind of anticipating the error to come, and the error comes more possessions than not.
And if you're wondering why, because this is the media debate of 2025 of like, if we're too hard on the players, we're assholes, and if we're not hard enough, we're glazing them. But if you're wondering why, like, it's just Ant and Julius for me, is because I don't really know what to say about like Rudy and Jaden as the other 2 main points out there. And then obviously this newly formed 6.5 man rotation. I mean, Nas was pretty good in the first quarter or first half again, like he has been in Phoenix and now tonight. And then it kind of tapers off in the second half. And I think some of that is a little bit of all the issues we're talking about now. But all Jaden and Rudy can do is try to save a play. I think both Rudy and Jaden in the final 3.5 minutes each had a really big offensive rebound that led to, I think Rudy had one that he got back to Julius that then got Ant cutting, which, oh my God, can you imagine? We should do more of that. And then Jaden had that huge rebound where he ripped up and then kind of force fed Julius right under the basket. Julius gets the two free throws. Like, I would love to like be critical of them and, maybe their defensive lapses and, Jaden's been a little handsy lately fouling, but I feel like they have just resigned themselves once again to like the only way we're probably going to eat is if we get grenades or lobs or offensive rebounds. It really comes back to, the Patrick Mahomes syndrome of the quarterback, like the best players get all the accolades when they win and they're going to get all the shit when they lose. And these last two games have been, it's completely different if you just go into Phoenix and lose. And I think it's completely different if you go into Sacramento. I mean, you kind of knew, by the way, elephant in the room. Jim Pete said when it was 9-2, man, they are leaving a lot of money on the table. You knew in the first quarter.
6 minutes into the game. The Kings had 2.6 minutes into the game.
And how many did the Wolves have?
9. Yeah.
Right? How many opportunities did they have? So it's just that. And then when you get into overtime, I can think of off the top of my head 2 moments as we now try to make everyone accountable. Jaden gets that steal where I think Dante kind of gets his hand in there, gets that steal. And what does Jaden do in transition? Turns the ball over. Rudy gets his hands on that ball. What does he do? He tries to throw an outlet pass, turns the ball over. This is just, I don't know if I'm going to go as far as our friend Barf, but he's like, when he says this is just the Timberwolves experience, but this team just does not have a winning, I don't want to say DNA, but like an ability to close out games and do those little extra things, both physically diving for loose balls, getting tips, saving offensive rebounds, or just the mental side of it. It just seems like they all think we can do this by ourselves. And now you have, screw a small sample size. You have enough now to highlight that it's just, they either need more structure or they need a completely new plan in these clutch time games because they're right back to where they were last year. The continuity is showing in terms of late game execution that they just don't have any answers. And when it's a Sacramento Kings team that doesn't really have a lot of defense in the first place and is playing Precious Achiuwa a lot of minutes, like that's a tough pill to swallow.
Today's show is brought to you by Falling Knife Brewing Company. And this Thanksgiving week, I bet you are looking for a place to go out with family and friends who are back in town this week. Let me make the case for Falling Knife. Wednesday night, we got Wolves Thunder. The sound will be on the projection screens and the TVs. I can't think of a better place to watch that game with Wolves fans than on Friday night, the day after Thanksgiving. They are doing a Kolsch service. I'm told a Kolsch service is like eating at a Brazilian steakhouse where they are bringing around the beer and you go until you're contented. They are also tapping their 600th batch Rhythmic Void. There's just a bunch of special beer releases that evening. It's a celebration of Tom Berg, who was a huge Wolves fan on his birthday. That's Friday night. Then Saturday at 4 p.m., the Wolves play the Celtics. You can go out a little bit earlier, watching the tap room at 4 o'clock at Falling Knife. And then on Sunday night as well, the Wolves play the Spurs. Again, at Falling Knife, the games are always on the projector screens with the sound on. That's what's going on at Falling Knife Brewing Company this week. Check it out, Northeast Minneapolis. Today's show is also brought to you by Your Home Improvement Company. And we know that you maybe got some people coming to town this week and you're like, I did not get that home improvement project done in advance of them getting here. Well, don't let that happen at Christmas too. Get your project done. Maybe you need your new windows, maybe a bathroom renovation. We got the deals with them there. Buy 2 windows, get 2 free, 30% off bathroom renovations. But any home improvement project, if you go through Thanksgiving week this week and go, yep, we need to get that thing taken care of, contact Your Home Improvement Company. Whatever the project is, they're done by certified local professionals and backed with a lifetime warranty. Also, they offer great financing deals where there's 0 money down, 0 interest, and 0 payments until 2027. Contact Your Home Improvement Company. You can do that by calling 866-777-YHIC or by going to yourhomeimprovement.co.com. Your Home Improvement Company, where it's your home made better. Yeah, it's what you're saying is like not having the winning time gene, right?
Yeah.
And for you, what was that? 2 years ago, they were awful in the clutch, right? 2 seasons ago.
I think it was 2 seasons ago, yeah.
And, again, like we said, they've not been a good clutch team for not just 2 seasons ago, for a lot of this time. But I remember maybe it was 3 seasons ago, the Pat Bev year, 4 seasons ago, the Pat Bev year, and this team was messing up at the end of those games. But at that time, Ant's 21, Jaden's 22, Nas 23. They're kind of like, well, the glass half full on this is they're getting reps in these clutch time situations, and they're going to learn from this. And a few years from now, when they're in those spots, they're going to be more prepared. They're going to be able to draw on past experience. There's been a lot of situations that those young guys have been in the subsequent 3-4 years. And I think that's what's, if we want to use the term alarming, that's what's alarming to me, is that looked like the way that this team would have played or did play when the game was on the line years ago, when they were substantially younger and less experienced. They're not an unexperienced clutch time team, yet they still seem to lack that winning time gene as much as they did back then, or close to it. And again, I don't know if we put that on one player or the other player. It's everyone. This team, everyone who's associated with it, does not have that winning time gene, and they haven't for a while. And it's alarming that they don't. It's alarming that when Ant is 24, Jaden's 25, Nas is 26, Rudy and Julius are in their 30s, that they do not seem like an experienced group in that time. I don't know what to do about that, other than let that drive down my belief in what this team can do from a regular season win total, and what it does drive down my belief for what the ceiling of this team is in the playoffs, when you're going to get these situations often, right? Like, in the playoffs, you're going to probably play a lot of close games over the course of the month. What is my confidence in the Wolves being able to out execute the Lakers, the Warriors, the Thunder, the Spurs, those teams in the playoffs? Like, I don't know. Something drastic is going to have to change over the course of the season, where I feel that they've developed that gene and like done it in numerous games for me to believe in it. Otherwise, by the time April, May comes around, that's the thing we're going to be talking about in X Factors, previewing the round 1 series against Houston or whatever, this team just feels very far away from me being able to believe in them when the game's on the line.
And it's actually more frustrating, is it not? Because like I've just been watching a lot of Grizzlies games lately. Don't ask me why, but they're just kind of losing a lot of games, and like 6-12 and getting blown out because they just don't have a ton of talent. Like Jaw's out and like whatever, but like, they're trying to rebuild on the fly, but there's a lot of teams that just lose a lot of games because they just don't match their opponent's talent level.
Right.
But this is a different conversation. Again, like, I'm not doing the glass half full optimistic shit. This is a team that really truly should wake up tomorrow, be 12-5 and be 4th in the West. And they're not, because back to this winning gene or their ability to close. If you want to feel really deflated, like 110-109, or I think it was 110-107, like they are falling apart in overtime, and they call a timeout. Hooray. And they drop a really quick 2 to get Ant right to the bucket. And maybe they thought, hell, maybe, again, I want to stress that Sacramento is putting out defenders like DeRozan and Malik Monk and Russell Westbrook and Achua. Like, no one who's probably making an all defensive team. Like, that should have been a plan to get to the rim almost every time and then crash the offensive glass. But I digress. So Ant gets that bucket
in the first half.
Yeah.
Like,
or like what Nas
already
Reed
earlier
did
in the game
all the time. But anyway, I digress. 110-109, 21 seconds left. The Kings, who, by the way, now have a timeout. Kings did not have a timeout in the fourth quarter with 8 minutes left to go. That's wild. Never seen that before. But we are now in overtime, and the Wolves are down 1. And you drop that quick 2 because now you want to play the foul game, right? I didn't agree with it, by the way, because I was like, dude, if DeRozan or Malik Monk get these free throws, they're going to be automatic. But I respect the coach for drawing it up. What happens next? A little bit of irony from what happened on Friday night. he subs in Jalen Clark to play defense. And for the second time in 2 games, Jalen Clark has an embarrassing foul. This time, before the ball has been inbounded, you have now given up a free point. And to be honest with you, the game is over at that point because now you're down 2 and now you're trying to get back into a 4-point. But you know when the game was really
because
over?
that DeRozan hits both of them and it's a 4-point game.
And then what happens? Julius Randle turns the ball over on an inbounds. Where have I seen that? Okay. So
why does that happen?
Because
I don't get the inbounds.
There's a malaise. Oh, I mean, it is. It's like, what else do you want me to say? Again, there's no one there to ask questions. Like, I just have to kind of come up with my own takes here. There's just a kind of too cool for school feeling in some of this stuff. And then if you really want to grind my gears, this Uber's coming 3 hours now from now. They inbound the ball, bad pass, Precious Achiuwa steals. They don't foul for 8 seconds. So they just kind of quit. Down 4. They give up 8 seconds. DeRozan hits them both. Wolves call a timeout. Great ATO. Dante hits a 3. But it doesn't matter because you burned 8 extra seconds in a game that you should have won 81 minutes earlier. That is bad. Like, again, I do want to mix in some water here quick. I do believe this is a long season, that you can figure these things out. You don't have to be reactionary where you immediately trade someone or fire someone. But this is about as bad, and you're a historian on this, you're closer to it than I am. I feel like this is about as bad of a 2-game stretch, the way they've lost the games, that I can remember in like the Ant and Finch pairing, at least since they've kind of elevated themselves to like a real contending
because they normally bounce back after they poop the bed.
Right. If they would have come off of if they would have beat the Suns by 11 in a cup game on Friday and then lost this one,
right?
I'm kind of a loser and I probably would have been upset, but I would have found a way to kind of write it off and let's just move forward. But to do this again after what you did in like borderline historic fashion against the Suns, and also while we're all watching it, we are all sitting on our couches together in this united front these last 2 games. And it's like the weird body language of malaise or half-assing it, or just like you're turning the ball over on inbounds passes to Precious Achiuwa. He's played for 11 teams. Like, what are we doing? Like, and what that tells me is that you're not, and this is like, I would never call an athlete soft. I don't like any of that stuff, but I will, like, it does question if this team is serious about winning games. Because if you're serious about winning games, think about back to the marathon analogy. If I run at a really good pace for 25 miles, why the fuck would I take the foot off the brake foot off the gas the last mile? Like, I want to sprint to the finish line. I want to win. I want to have a good time. I want to like beat all the people that I've passed behind me. This team does the opposite of that. They let off the gas. They park. They grab some food. Like, they do nothing to close out games. And I get everyone's frustration and everyone losing their mind.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's like up by 8, whatever, 3 minutes to go is same thing, or up by 8 with a minute to go in the Phoenix game. And like, the ESPN odds at the time of the win projection, right, is like over 88% or something like that. And they start playing as if that's like just what it is, like going to hold. That 88% like assumes you keep playing. You know what I'm saying? Like it's constant. It's even the Wizards game before these 2 losses, they're up by 27 at halftime or in the first half. And it's like, yeah, when you're up by 27 in the first half, like 98% of the time you're going to win the game. But the way that 2% happens is by treating it as such. And they did against the Wizards. And if they're playing somebody better than the 1-win Wizards and bring that same energy, they lose that Wizards game. The Wizards cut it to 5 in like clutch time in that game after the Wolves are up by 27 in the first half. I'm sorry, that wasn't like the Wizards all of a sudden like making a million shots or somebody playing out of their mind. It was the Wolves stopping playing. Like,
and then that was
who they are.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Just that Wizards game, you brought it up. You and I talked about this after that game. The one thing I did like about that is as the Wizards were coming back, Julius literally flexed on TV, got the ball multiple times low in the post because he knew they were the Wizards and they didn't have any resistance. Kind of like I thought this Kings team tonight, or even the Suns on Friday without Devin Booker or Dylan Brooks. And he just kind of like took the game back, right? They didn't do that. This team, to your point, once they have a big enough lead or it does get to those final 4 minutes, they go first, second, third down, half back dive. They run right up the middle. They do. And now this might parlay yourself into whatever thoughts you or I have on like the coaching. Like there is a disconnect. I would imagine Ant wants to take better shots than a pump fake running banker to win the game. I would imagine his coach would like him to take a better shot. But it didn't happen. And why is there a disconnect there? Because this team literally just runs the ball. They never play action to try to seal the game and get the first down. They just kind of hope the other team misses. And you know enough about watching all these NBA games. Like teams get so amped to get on a little bit of a run and steal a game. And that's what Phoenix did. And that's what Sacramento did tonight.
To the Finch point, I would say, generally speaking, when it has come to meltdowns, my inclination is to point to errors the players, made on the floor. I did that with the Phoenix game. We talked about some of the stuff Ant did at the end of that game, or didn't do, that cost them. I'm not as much on like Finch doesn't know what a timeout is Hive, even though sometimes point some of those things out. But you know me, like I'm not. It's not normally the direction I go to it. I'm more swayed by seeing failed inbounds passes and seeing brains turn off and throwing it to the other team. Even if I do see, okay, some Finch things there, what always has previously kind of won the day for me, or what I choose to talk about is the players things more than the coach thing. But going back to this being a 3-4 year thing with this team at the end of games, if Finch can't get them to stop doing those things, Finch is still a common denominator here. I am not convinced that if it was a different coach, I am convinced that if it was a different coach, that this would not have happened as many times as it did. It's too many times. It's too many times for it to not, Ant made a boneheaded play. Like, sure, that happened, but they make boneheaded plays all the time. They've made boneheaded plays with at end of games with different personnel. They made mistakes all the time in these situations when Karl-Anthony Towns and Nickeil Alexander-Walker and Kyle Anderson were on this team. They got rid of those guys. They bring in new guys into this team. And Julius Randle is making those same type of mistakes. Anthony Edwards still is. Jalen Clark still is. Why is it always happening?
Mm-hmm.
Even if my inclination is to point to the players in specific instances, on a more macro level, this is the team that Finch has been coaching all of those years. And every one of those teams has had issues in executing this in a way that is outsized relative to the rest of the league. You're right. Other teams, you said earlier, like other teams have meltdowns and stuff like this too. The Wolves have them more consistently. The Wolves' numbers in clutch time are more consistently bad. So what is it? I think it's everyone, and I think the three most people to blame are Edwards, Randle, and Finch. But it's absolutely Finch too. It's just too many instances for us to look the other way and not think that an element of this is coaching that is leading to the lack of execution in close games.
And that's why I go back to there was places to call a timeout in that Phoenix game. I've actually watched the final 3 minutes of that game like 4 times. Just every time I'm like down, I'm like, you know what make me feel, like when you're sad, like what else will make me cry even harder? Like I'm gonna go watch more of the Suns game. There were some opportunities to call a timeout in that one. But again, like if
Only
you're trying to
one. Yeah.
if you're trying to pick which game would I put more on the head coach, like to me, it is this one.
I would agree with that.
And I wonder, and again, like by the way, like Jace can be critical of Ant on Friday and we don't have to trade him. Like we can be critical of the coach, like you have to be better and we don't have to fire him. But I find it I wonder if you could go back in time 2 hours ago, or if you could ask Chris Finch privately, do you wish you wouldn't have brought Ant and Julius back in? Because a lot of people, again, like the time, like, oh my God, I can't believe he went that long without him. They're playing pretty good basketball, man, that first 7 minutes of the fourth quarter. And again, I'm not saying that they would have never brought them back in, but I think that's probably got to be the first time all season that he sat both of them that long, right? Like they didn't come in until
but I
under
let it
6
with.
minutes.
I thought they were out. We can't be doing both. They were out
Well,
too long. But should have they come in at all?
Oh no, but I'm not though.
Yeah.
I guess my point is like how often do you sometimes see that coach that has a really tight stranglehold on his team just be like, hey, those 5 guys are hooping, and I'm just going to run with them as far as possible. Now, I know you had to bring Ant back in.
I just don't trust that group to score enough. I mean,
but just I'm not being petty. Devil's advocate. Then he put them both in, and they're outscored 16-8. They scored 8 points in 5 minutes and 45 seconds.
But if we run that 100 times, you know what I'm saying? Like,
no, I know, but I do wonder if because you made me think of this. I'm like, man, I can't believe he didn't bring him until that point. Like, they didn't lose in the fourth quarter the non-Ant and Julius minutes. They won them. Okay, like that's a feather in someone's cap. Now, ironically, and we've 40 minutes into this, I don't know where you want to plug this in, so I'm just going to say it now. He only had 5 other guys he could play. And I think that is, if you want to talk about themes, by the way, for the listeners, we had a whole outline that we were going to do. And maybe
we're going to skip the OKC part, I think.
Tune in to some other pod. But I mean, that's a concern too. Is like, okay, Ant and Julius on the bench. This is now, in my opinion, like a very firm 7-man rotation. Because, I mean, I actually thought the best of the 3 young guys tonight, Jalen Clark, Terrence Shannon Jr., Rob Dillingham, the best of the 3 of those guys tonight was Rob Dillingham. None of those guys are a threat to score right now, which is a major concern because it's a little bit of cold porridge, medium porridge, hot porridge. Like you would expect Terrence Shannon Jr. to be hot porridge. People internally thought that guy could average 17 points a game, and he's not scoring. But Rob at least gave you some defense tonight. But when the shit hit the fan, like Finch just, I only have 7 options to go to. So that is also a major concern that the best, the shifty kid won't shoot and the bucket getter can't get buckets.
He just didn't take that 1-3.
Yep.
Remember that?
It was wide open. And again, I if we're just going simply good or bad, pass or fail grades, I would have passed Rob tonight.
Yeah.
Because he had that kind of snake thing where the one thing about Chris Finch, I will say, or like coaching, Chris Finch has turned Rob Dillingham into a little bit of a defensive player. He's never going to be great because he's physically limited. But when he kind of got stuck on all those screens late in the fourth and then immediately recovered in front of Precious Achiuwa to get that steal, that was a big moment. But again, the shifty kid won't shoot. The bucket getter, Terrence Shannon Jr., won't get buckets. And the defensive player of the year in college from 2 years ago, Jalen Clark, continues to have really frustrating fouls that is driving his coach really crazy. That one in the third quarter, at the end of the third quarter against the Suns, I think that's why he didn't put him back in. I think he was a little bit in the doghouse, man. Like, I know Jalen Clark was introduced to us a year ago in Phoenix, and I think he was kind of buried in the fourth quarter because of what he did. And then to foul, and it's a little bit on Jaden too, if you watch the replay, but you can't drop a play to get a quick 2 and tell your guys in the huddle, we're going to play the foul game, and then you go foul someone before the ball is inbounded and essentially neuter and nuke the rest of the game in the strategy. So tough.
Today's show is brought to you by Factor. And when fall comes around in our household, we start doing Factor. Seriously, it's a lifesaver, saving time from making dinner. Because with a busier routine in the fall, going to games a lot, it's tough for me to find time to cook. That's why I love Factor. Their chef-prepped, dietitian-approved meals. They make it easy for me to stay on track and enjoy something comforting and delicious, no matter how hectic my schedule gets. Factor has more variety and more meals than they ever have before. You can choose from a wide selection of weekly meal options, including premium seafood choices like salmon and shrimp. No extra cost on those. For more choices to better nutrition, that's why 97% of customers say that Factor helped them live a healthier life. and you can feel the difference no matter what your routine is. I really do use this, and I think you should too. Eat smart at factormeals.com/DaneMoore50 off and use the code DaneMoore50 off to get 50% off your first box plus free breakfast for 1 year. That's code DaneMoore50 off at factormeals.com for 50% off your first box plus free breakfast for 1 year. You can find that URL and code in the show notes. Get delicious, ready-to-eat meals delivered with Factor. Offer only valid to new Factor customers with code and qualifying auto-renewing subscription purchase. No, to the Shannon being back point, it's funny. I agree with you. It felt like 7 guys, but actually 10 guys played. And they all played.
I was being snarky.
No.
I think the young guys all played under 10 minutes, I think.
But that's the thing. By playing all 3 of them in the game in general, it kind of felt like you played none of them. And it's kind of like last year. Yeah. Remember when they would, the 9th guy in the rotation, it was like they would play 5 minutes in the first half, and it was Dillingham. Sometimes it's Ingles, sometimes. And then it was like, and we joked about the rotation being 8.5, but the half didn't really count. Well, that's what it kind of feels like when they get to 10 guys here now fully healthy again, having Terrence Shannon Jr. back. I thought that one of Jalen Clark or Rob Dillingham were not going to play in this game if Terrence Shannon Jr. was going to be back in his pre-injury role. And he was. He subbed in before both of those guys in the first quarter. He came in for McDaniels when McDaniels got his first sub, the time that Clark had been going into the game normally. And it was like, all right, that's your 8. Like, Shannon's your 8th guy. How much is the 9th guy going to play? Well, but Dillingham and Clark come in, but it's just for these little tiny pockets of time. And that just feels political to me. It's like we're just playing guys so they see, stay engaged, or because they were a first round pick, or because the front office is invested in them. Like, one of those guys just has to not play, and that's okay. So it's more minutes so one of them can get into a rhythm. Because I think what we've learned with Rob Dillingham for 2 seasons is if you just give him these little breadcrumbs here and there, 4 or 5 minutes, like, you're not going to get anything substantive out of it. I think that with Jalen Clark too. I think, like, if you're going to play Jalen Clark, like, you gotta, like, give him enough air to be able to, like, unlock his inner Nickeil Alexander-Walker and impact the game, and Terrence Shannon Jr. too. Like, he needs to have enough air to be able to feel comfortable enough. And these guys are young. Like, it's hard to be an 8 minutes a night guy. And so I would hope that one recourse from this game, and the way that those 3 guys didn't really help at all in this game, is figuring out a different way to do this rotation. Because I think going to 10 nullified all the 8th, 9th, and 10th guy. It also forced you into this, I don't know, forced you, but it put them into this situation where they played a lot of minutes in this game without Edwards and Randall on the floor, which is not something they normally do. Like, this didn't work. The 10 guy thing didn't work. And I feel pretty confident in saying it won't work, because I don't think any of those, if one of those guys was like a veteran dude and they kind of had more confidence in who they were as players and stuff like that, it's like, okay, playing this little thing. But I think for Shannon and Dillingham and Clark, who are all functionally in their 2nd year in the league, like, I don't think they can give you a positive outcome if you're only giving them this little. I did not get why all 3 of them played in this game. I don't think that's going to work going forward.
Can we talk about that a little more in depth? Just because I had some notes, but this would probably be the best time for me to highlight the note that I wrote down in the 3rd quarter. This was the game that you felt the absence of Nickeil Alexander-Walker. This was the 2nd apron loss. Because I've said before, you and I did our thing, and I still don't know how badly I lost that argument, but we talked about 4th bananas. Off the bench right now, they only have 1 good bench player. No, the injury report's pretty clean. I know Rocco's wearing a mask down in Des Moines, but, like, Naz Reid is all they got. And Mike Conley played 25 minutes tonight, and I actually thought Mike Conley, he was a -3, but I thought he was pretty good. He did lead the team in assists. He got Rudy engaged a little bit, but Mike Conley now at this point, I mean, he got 25 minutes. Like, he is kind of what he is. And he knows that. And the team, they have 1 good bench player. for a team that I've kind of like raved about their depth. And back to the young guys now. I also wrote in my phone of like, wrist slaps for Chris Finch for I didn't love playing all three of the guys either. The order at which they came in was interesting because pretty sure Jalen Clark and Terrence Shannon Jr. subbed in at the same time in the first quarter. And I thought originally, like, all right, sorry, Rob, like you're not taking your pants off tonight. But then Rob did come in the second quarter. I was like, oh my God, okay, he's going to play all three of them. None of them played 10 minutes. None of them made a basket. I know by talking to, I know they're 0 for 6, all three of them combined. Rob Dillingham, by the way, career high 3 steals. I know by talking to those guys, and you know this way more than I do, like vet, rookie, second year guy, whatever, none of them want to play 6 minutes in a game because it does, like it fucks up your confidence. So when, TJ misses that first shot, if he only plays 7 minutes, he's like, oh, like it, I know those guys are going through it a little bit mentally now. And that's where I'm like, what are you doing as the head coach? And conversely, just to play devil's advocate, if I'm the head coach and I'm looking at us like, bro, they gave us nothing. What do you want me to do? So I think
what I want him to do is
cut one of them. Yeah, cut one of them and like, okay, 6 minutes for Jalen Clark, 7 minutes for Terrence Shannon Jr., 9 minutes for Rob Dillingham.
I just don't like the process on this. Like, I just don't like the process on.
Well, because it's not
still
sustainable.
Playing. Yeah,
it's like this team clearly tried to win this game. And that has been something that I have kind of touted of like, love him or hate him. Like Chris Finch came here 4.5 years ago and was like, he's here to win games. They tried to win this game tonight. They did not, I still get shit from the highest ranking officials in this team about the whole gap year idea. Well, the whole process of that was to give those guys some reps so that year 2 that you could build off it. Now, I had to eat a lot of crow because they ended up making it back to the Final Four, but we're kind of in this part again where you're playing a Kings team without their best player. They're a bad roster. They're a bad team. And you can't get 2 points from your 3 young trio of pups. Like, so what do you do now against OKC? You think Terrence is going to give them 14? Right. Like unless they're down 50 in the fourth, which I mean, again, those young guys have shown in Oklahoma City a propensity to come back. But I'm with you on the process part of it because again, and this is where I do talk out of both sides of my mouth, but I'm okay losing to the Kings if you got a nice Terrence game on top of a pretty good Nas 15-7 game. Like I know he's 1 for 6 from 3, but like, okay, like we're starting to build some stuff because this is all about April and May. Tonight was all about November 24th, and you couldn't even win that game. So like, that's kind of why at the top I was like, this is concerning. This is, players only meeting Wednesday night, Thursday morning before Thanksgiving. Don't do it before the OKC game, but you pulled all the wrong levers as an organization here, like the Ant and Julius and Finch and everyone else, and you still couldn't do it. It's a pretty big red flag.
0 against Levine and then 14 against Caruso would be wild.
Zach LaVine's defense was the only thing that kept Minnesota in the game late. I mean, I love Zach LaVine, but he just, I don't know. And I'd be remiss if we didn't at least just, as we're again, only 7 guys really did anything tonight. Gun to your head, like, do you think it was a good Rudy game? It was against a bad group of big guys, but I thought Rudy was really good tonight.
Yeah, the 2 last things I've done from this game, I did want to note that Keegan Murray played in this game, and I think he might be their best player. I thought he really helped them. He's been, I think this was his 3rd game back. I think that gave them another person to guard Edwards or Randall in this game, which made, and a shooter, like they needed a shooter too. So I think this was a better Kings team than they played previously, even like with Sabonis not out there. Just wanted to note that thought he played well. But yeah, I mean, I'm getting a little sick of doing like silver linings in games that were absolute meltdowns. But yeah, like my notes here on Rudy are like really positive until the end of the game. It's the same as my notes were really positive on Ant in the Phoenix game prior to the end of the game. And I guess we need to be talking about those things, but it does feel kind of,
but that's what makes it more
lifeless.
frustrating. You know what I mean? Like that goes back to like, because I know like there's maybe certain players aren't listening to this, but their people are, and like this should be positive. These last two games, like what the Wolves did against Phoenix in that third quarter was like, oh,
Yeah.
that's what it's supposed to look like. That's how you've all gotten big deals, contract extensions, and that's how you've made it to the Final Four, playing basketball like that. But again, we're talking about the fourth quarter and the rotations and overtime. Anyone who's been in this long enough, watching this team, covering this team, you kind of knew when it was 9-2 because Jim Pete was all over. It's like, dude, this should probably be 21-4. Like they're being sloppy. I mean, how many times did Alan Horton or Jim Pete on the call tonight say like, this is not going to the Naismith Hall of Fame? And it's, by the way, this is the first time we've done a post-game pod with a box score in a while. So I was looking at the Kings. They played 10 guys, like double-digit minutes, and like Nick Clifford, who I think Colorado State played for Nico Medved, like 12 minutes, 3 points, 6 rebounds. Like he gave him a little something. The Wolves can't get anything. I mean, again, I think the highlight of this podcast and this last two games is like it starts at the top, and if the top of the snake can't figure it out, who cares about the rest of it? But this team feels like there's an opportunity there, and maybe there's not. Maybe to your point, like maybe all three of those guys should not have an opportunity to play for a while, and only two of them should be hand selected to give more minutes to see if one of them can give them a spark. But the three of them were all pretty bad tonight.
Yeah.
And that is also concerning because as you start to look around at like who can help fix this, you just have to kind of keep pointing at like Ant and Julius.
Yeah. No, I wrote down Rudy was a force on the offensive glass. Sacramento was sending doubles at Randall and Edwards. Gobert was a release valve for them. He kind of has been that effectively throughout the season. When he's off the floor, there's always a possession or two where it's like, here are free points, just the lane's wide open and somebody goes down and dunks. Gobert had a big never mind with 45 seconds left in the game. Largely it was a pretty good defensive rating game overall. I'm sure the defensive rating with Rudy on the floor was really good in this game. I think Rudy is doing what he can do to help. It's just he's not going to be the guy that's going to be able to solve your late game issues. That what they need in that time is ball control, stability, and Rudy's game just inherently isn't that. So yeah, like if I had to say somebody who played best, it'd probably be Rudy because I don't think he cost them at the end of the game other than that one really silly turnover. So that was a pretty bad one. So
right.
So maybe maybe he did, but yeah, I don't even put Rudy in that group anymore, I guess.
And
which I'm not sure is a compliment or an indictment.
And since you're talking about him, this was another note I had. Now we're kind of going back a little bit in the second and third quarter. Finch did try to do the Julius and Nas thing tonight without Jalen and Jaden on the floor, obviously because Jalen Clark played a whole 6 minutes. But like, if we're trying to be like, okay, let's all regroup, let's take a deep breath. Turkey's coming. Like we get positive things coming up. But what's one thing we're going to do differently against OKC and moving forward that we were messing up in the past? If I see Julius and Nas on the court, I have to see Jaden and Jalen. It's just that simple. It's not even if it's like an if-then statement.
But that's not going to be able to happen if Terrence Shannon Jr. is in the rotation.
Right. No. Like
So I think the question is, can Shannon be one of those guys? Can he be part of the solution? Can he be like a Clark or McDaniels? He has not, I think, acquitted himself well on defense this season, but I think that should be a prerequisite for him being in the rotation right now and getting an opportunity over a Dillingham or a Clark, is that he is a defensive help in those minutes when Rudy's off the floor, because for 17 games this season, this team has screamed that group with Rudy off the floor needs help defensively. So I do think they need to be intentional about who the wings are that they're putting out there next to Reed and Randall. We know who the two best defensive ones are, and that's McDaniels and Clark. And I just don't know if they're going to be able to get to that if Shannon is the eighth man here too. So it's kind of like,
Yeah.
one roadblock here to another
Yeah.
roadblock there to another roadblock there. It's a imbalanced roster and clearly an imperfect team right now.
I feel really bad because I know you did a lot of prep for the Thunder game.
Yeah, well, let's do 5 minutes on that.
But so this question is going to be affected by the Thunder game, but let's just pretend that let's talk about maybe after the Thunder game. Of those three young guys, though, because I'm with you, by the way, I'm going to be very frustrated and disappointed if all three of them get a chance to continue playing. I don't think I want a 10-man rotation. But of Jalen Clark,
we got that.
of Jalen Clark, Rob Dillingham, and Terrence Shannon Jr., if Finch said, hey, I'm going to give one of those guys 20 minutes for a month, who would you have right now at the top of that list?
I think the safest play is Clark, and I think the highest upside play is Shannon.
I think Jalen Clark has more confidence right now in his jump shot than Terrence Shannon Jr. does. And I know I just got to see him for one game, and he only missed one shot, so that's super unfair. But I think Jalen's not afraid to let it rip. He even got a little frisky tonight trying to drive to the basket, mix it up for offense. So I would say to just baseline, how do we fix what you just said? Like, you just keep veering from one pothole to the other. How do we patch one pothole? It's that Jalen Clark is just, you're guaranteed double-digit minutes now in this rotation because Rob got those steals and that's fun. And maybe he can set Nas up, but Nas is like cooking again. And Nas doesn't always need Rob, and Terrence is his own little thing. But I think Jalen Clark's impact, as we look ahead to OKC, like they're going to have guys that can defend Shea. And I think Jalen Clark should just be out there because then he is like this linchpin that then helps a lot of other things down the list. And they're going to continue to go back to the Julius and Nas 2-man thing when Rudy's on the bench. So yeah, looking ahead to OKC, right? Yeah. I think Jalen Clark should be kind of force-fed minutes. But yeah, what hit Dean with 5 minutes of the OKC stuff, because I know you did a lot of prep and it was fun to talk about, but not anymore.
Yeah. Well, I would say to tie the two topics together, my guess for what happens on Wednesday is Rob Dillingham doesn't play against the Thunder on Wednesday, and it's a 9-man rotation with Reed and Conley, Clark, and Shannon off the bench. That would be my guess of what happens going forward. And there's going to be if Rob is out of the rotation for that game or for a period of games here while the team is at full health, there's going to be a cry of like, oh, that's going to kill his confidence. And my response to that would be, what confidence? Because I don't see a very confident version of Rob Dillingham out there right now. I do see the defense. Obviously, the defense. Actually, Rob Dillingham's defense has impressed me in his time in the NBA, but I don't see a player confident enough to consistently be able to help them win games against good teams. So I think that's what will ultimately get him shifted out of this rotation for the Wolves going forward, or at least against Oklahoma City. But specific to OKC, let's just talk a little bit about that team. Obviously, they're people have seen the numbers. I think they're up to 17-1. I don't think they played last night or tonight. But 17-1 on the season. Jalen Williams is out. They're still doing that. Their defense, just statistically, I mean, you watch them to the eye test, it's insane. But I thought like there was something wrong with the defensive rating column when I was looking at this morning. Oklahoma City has the best defensive rating in the NBA at 103.1. The number 2 defense in the NBA this season is the Detroit Pistons, and their defensive rating is 110.1. 7 points per 100 possessions worse. The Wolves, when they were the epic defense 2 years ago, and it was like a huge gap between them and number 2, it was like 2 or 3 points. I should look that up exactly, but it was like a huge gap. We made a big deal about the huge gap. It was a big deal because like having a defensive rating over the course of a season that's 3 points better than the number 2 team is massive. And we felt that with the Wolves. The Thunder is 7 between them and Detroit. The gap between number 2 Detroit and number 20 Chicago is 7 points per 100 possessions. This is an unprecedentedly good defensive team in Oklahoma City, which is obviously going to be a test for the Wolves. We know that. We know the turnovers was a huge thing that killed them in the Western Conference Finals. I think this defense is like, at least statistically, is better this season. I know they haven't played a great schedule, but that's a damn good defensive team. What's crazy to me is Jalen Williams their second best player hasn't played all season. And sure enough, they just reach into their Presti bag and they pull out AJ Mitchell and put him out there. And he was on a 2-way last season. And AJ Mitchell is like doing what we thought the 99th percentile outcome of Terrence Shannon Jr. season was going to be. It's like all of a sudden this guy goes from not playing at all his rookie season really to being in the rotation, and now he's scoring 17 points again. AJ Mitchell is doing that for this team. That's something that's different for this Oklahoma City Thunder team than we last saw them in the Western Conference Finals. No Jalen Williams. AJ Mitchell has replaced him. They're not really missing a beat with that. And then, man, when I'm watching this Oklahoma City team, Chet Holmgren is a big level up from what he was a season ago. I think I don't really know how most improved player works anymore, but to me, if having watched, every team a couple times this far this season, I think Chet has made the biggest improvement year over year of like already good players. Does that make sense? Of like
100%.
already being a top 50 guy or whatever Chet is amongst that group. I think he's taken the biggest step forward. So while this Oklahoma City Thunder team doesn't really have different players, they ran back the same roster that they had from a season ago. There are some differences, and they almost feel better than they did a season ago, which sets up for a huge challenge for the Wolves on Wednesday night. And in that challenge, a huge opportunity. Like the single best thing that the Wolves can do to shut us up about these two games and two epic meltdowns against mid teams is going, put up 130 on the best defensive team in the league. And this Wolves team is weird enough that I wouldn't put it past them. Like I wouldn't be surprised if that too cool for school attitude is gone when they show up on the floor at Oklahoma City and they come out trying to kill. And if they do that, that's going to be a step in the right direction. I'm still going to hold my reservations because I saw these last two games. But God, doesn't it kind of feel like the Wolves to salvage the end of 2025, this last month of the year, feels like this game is really important against the Thunder.
You had me fucked up. I thought it was like December 26th. I was like, is this the last game of the calendar year? No, I'm so with you. But I will say, if that does happen, and you and I are done recording for the week because we're both going to go hang out with our families, it's not a gotcha though, right? Like you shouldn't need to get embarrassed by Precious Achua for you to play well against the champs. Like you should have been coming into this Wednesday game, and this should have been like a heavyweight fight on all the 900 streaming services that we have to get to watch these games. It's like the Wolves are coming in and they're 12-5. They want revenge against the Thunder, right? Like they could have made this a more interesting game by what they failed to do Friday and tonight. That said, like you're totally right. The Chet Holmgren stuff. I also think the Thunder might, as they look for reasons to be motivated at 17-1, be pissed off, are probably a little pissed that the Wolves choked away that game on Friday in a cup game, because the Thunder should have been the story of that night. Why? They went on a 33-4 run against the Jazz. And guess what? The Jazz called 3 timeouts during that run. They're a fucking wagon. And it's impressive. And, the jokes are like there's no such thing as a championship hangover when none of the players drink alcohol, which is like one of the funny things because half their team is so young. But they have found like whatever the secret sauce is to stay engaged in these games. The only game they lost was when they were out here.
The secret sauce is they're not too cool for school. They aren't.
They're like the inverse of that.
They're kind of nerdy.
Nerds.
Yeah.
Hey, everyone, come do this press conference with me, and we'll put towels over people's heads. Like, to me, like I kind of like roll my eyes and gag a little bit, and it's cheesy, and it's like it works. But on the court though, they like, to your point, they're fucking killers. Like they want to take all of your pride away, and they did that 144-112 against the Jazz in that cup game. Did
you
I watched the entire game. That game, yeah.
The first quarter, Utah scored 44 points in the first quarter of that game.
And how many did they score in the second half? 44 combined, like total.
Oh, is that actually? Oh,
44 in the first quarter, 20 in the third, 24 in the fourth, because they dialed it up and they said, you know why? Hashtag because it's the cup. It's a fascinating thing, and they are a better team than they were last year. Like, I think I don't know who turned me onto this, but like last year in the Rob Dillingham draft, the Wolves had, I think at the time, I don't remember what happened, second round 2024, but the Wolves had the 37th pick in the draft, and they drafted Bobby Clintman, a lawyer from PwC. But next pick in that draft, 38th, AJ Mitchell, drafted by the Knicks and then sent over to OKC. And he's just a new fun piece that they just give minutes to. And it's like, I mean, that's where I think it's such a loser mentality just for anyone in the league to be like, well, why should we even try? Like, OKC is just going to win it all. But when you watch AJ Mitchell play, that does kind of seep into your brain of like, okay, so the Wolves couldn't get Jalen, TJ, or Rob to do anything against the Kings tonight, but then the Thunder, who are coming off a championship, get really good minutes from AJ Mitchell, who was like their ninth guy.
Who's on a two-way last year?
Yeah.
Two-way.
Yeah. Anything else on the Thunder? I mean, I want to do more of a preview, but it is going to be a really fun test because of now the taste that has been in this team's mouth for about a week, because it's not just we really hammered the loss to the Kings. And then you and Jace did a really great breakdown earlier today, 2 pods in one day, about what happened to the Suns, but also too, like the Wizards, right? Like it's actually 3 games in a row now. So that's enough of a trend. And I think the most frustrating thing to me, to close on my end, like a little bit of an addendum, is these last 2 games, Ant's been awesome. And I don't know if I stressed that enough at the top, because I know we kind of put a lot of blame on him.
No, that's Can you say that? Can you say that? Ant put up big stat lines. I don't think it's fair to say Ant was awesome in these 2 games.
Okay, yeah, right? That's fine. Don't reword. It's late. You're right. I'm just saying, like, after what we did on Friday and the talks we had, and it's like in the last 2 games, he's averaging 42 and he's 5 for 11 from 3 in each of those games. Like, it's more frustrating that he actually figured some of it out, or he's come out playing good basketball for the first 44 minutes, that this team, and he's the lead guard quarterback of it, like they just couldn't close him out. And I'm less excited now about Wolves Thunder on Wednesday than I was with 91 seconds left against the Suns. Because I was like, okay, maybe they read the articles and heard everyone, and like, now F you to everyone else, we're going to come out and do it. And they did not do that. And I do think that this is a little bit of a team in crisis, and teams have crises all the time.
Sure.
Throughout the season. I'm not trying to like downplay that or overplay it, but this is now the Wizards game, that second half, the final 90 seconds of the Suns, and then the final 3 minutes of tonight. It's a long enough trend that this is a crisis, and you have very little time to figure it out because you're about to play what might be one of the best NBA teams ever on Wednesday.
It can be okay if this is the low point of the season. My question to you is, do you think this is the low point of the season?
Nope. I don't.
Yeah.
But I also don't think, like, I'm going to be doing Thanksgiving at a nursing home on Wednesday. I'm not even going to watch that game. I'll rewind it on Friday, but I don't know what could happen on Wednesday that would make it a lower point than it is right now, if that makes sense. Because it's such a different animal that at some point some of the other 29 teams are gonna have to solve. But I don't know. It's so early in the season. I do think this team legitimately will have a players only meeting at some point that's probably led by Joe Ingles in seat 1 in the locker room. But
you're really into this players only meeting.
Well, I mean, I can double check this. I think the Wolves have had one in the last 4 seasons. So you want to talk about trends? Like, there you go. Like at some point, I don't know. Do you think that? Like, is that a weird take to be like, I think there could be a new low point at some point?
I'm thinking to last year, and it was around this time actually. The low point felt like after the Warriors game they lost was actually the game Dante DiVincenzo injured his toe, and then the next game they went to Madison Square Garden and beat the Knicks, and then I think because of that, the game against the Warriors became the low point because they won that. Julius played really well. It was like his first really, like, the 15, 8, and 8, the Julius triple double sort of game is like one of those where he like switched the flipped the switch into kind of finding the optimal playmaker thing that he's now found and is like kind of made his normal with this team. But if you remember that Warriors game, that was a bad loss. That was the low point. I told a story about how before we went into the locker room to interview the players after that Warriors loss, Julius Randle is on his way out and Buddy Hield is in the hallway and Julius is like storming out of there. And I heard Buddy Hield go, "Oh, I know that look. I know that look." and I walk into the locker room and I'm like, "Oh, this is the low point." And I think it did prove to kind of be the low point of that season. Obviously they didn't go on like some terrific run. Their 17-4 stretch was still a couple months away, but it felt like they started to turn a corner at what I thought was the low point of the season. Maybe some people would say the Toronto game last year, but I'm pretty sure the Warriors thing came after that. It was kind of right. It was like another one, and this right now feels like another one. I think it's important that this is the low point of the season. I think it kind of has to be for this season to, be what we all kind of anticipated it happening. You're right. There's a lot of season left which leaves just room for another 2 bad games at some point. This season's Milwaukee, I think they'll probably be a rough stretch, but I think it's just important that they turn some sort of corner. I think the Oklahoma City game and or this weekend against Boston and San Antonio gives them an opportunity to get that ball rolling, right? It doesn't need to instantly be back like we're here, we are who we thought we were, but just not continuing to trend down. I think that's important, but I can't confidently say that I think they do turn it at this juncture because this kind of feels like this. I don't know. This team just feels a ways away from figuring themselves out if they're going to do that this season.
It felt like watching them lose tonight, like a group that had a lot of continuity, losing games like this. Not to like bemoan the point, but I just want to lean into that one thing quick because I always bring up that Bucks game, and that was a terrible loss during a stretch, by the way, where they won 17 of their last 21. It was just such a seismic loss to watch Kyle Kuzma be the best player on the court. But to this Warriors thing, are you talking about? Because I'm looking at the schedule. They lost to Golden State, and you thought that was kind of the low point for them.
Yeah,
because based on the
kind
schedule,
of
I'm
turn the
looking
corner.
at
The next game, right, was the Knicks. Right after that,
the one I'm looking at is like last season, 24-25. They lost to the Knicks at home, and I think that was the Cat return game, which everyone didn't love. That there was 9 tribute videos. Then they went back at home, lost to Golden State. You're there, and maybe that was the low point. December 21st. Then they lost again to Atlanta the following game.
Okay,
but then they went on to win 7 of their next 10. And I'm not saying that you just every
Am I
time
making up that Knicks game?
They lost to the Knicks at home in December. This is great podcasting, but
No. I'm talking about the game at Madison Square Garden.
Oh, okay. They won that game and then they went. Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, I see that. January 17th. Yep, I see that. They lost to the Golden State Warriors on January 15th by 1, and then they went into New York and won. I see that. And then they ended up losing their next 2. But I guess to your bigger point, I see what you're trying to say of like, it doesn't take much for this team historically to randomly just skyrocket up from their lowest point.
Sure.
This can't be the lowest point because, I mean, again, I'm betting like they're probably going to lose on Wednesday to the defending champs. But I guess it's such a good question, by the way, this late at night. But I hope that this is the low point, right? I think we all do, that they can kind of figure some of this stuff out. But it does feel like there's less options right now in my mind, based on everything we just dissected, to try to figure it out. And that it does kind of come back to the 3-headed snake of Chris Finch, Julius Randle, and Anthony Edwards of like, it might just have to be solved by those 3 guys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. You're
right. My bad.
January 15th, they played the Warriors, and that's what I was calling the low point. And then they turned the corner, and January 17th beat the Knicks. But I think when we were talking, I said it was at this time of last year, which it wasn't. It was in January. Which is a signal here too that there's a lot more time for things to go up and down. It's not even Thanksgiving yet, but it is a low point. I think if this season turns out to exceed our expectations, this will have been the low point. How about that? But we gotta see how they respond. They didn't respond in this one after what happened in Phoenix, lose to a Kings team with a really bad record, and did so in dispiriting fashion. Next up is the Thunder. We'll see what happens there. Kind of like I've been saying all week, me and Kyle are both heading out of town to be with our families for Thanksgiving. So I will not be back until Sunday. I'll be at that Wolves Spurs game on Sunday night. Cover that one. And then Jason and I will do a pod on Monday morning. And I guess we'll kind of have to cover the Thunder game, the Celtics game, and the Spurs game all in one there. But yeah, that's what's coming up next. Going to be, though, a good 5-6 day break here between now and then. Do you have anything you want to hit before we go?
No, just this is the last one in the queue for the week. So as always, safe travels to everyone. And the holidays always mean certain things and give positive and negative feelings to people. So I always try to, at this next month of the year, just to check in on the people that are close to you, because you never know who might be spending the holidays by themselves or is just going through stuff. So this is still, as frustrating as this loss was, or as frustrating as the last couple of losses have been, this is still such a distraction for me from all the other stuff going on. So I always appreciate you, and I safe travels to you and your family as well. But thanks again to everyone who supports this podcast and what we do, because it means a lot and allows us to keep doing fun things like this.
Yeah, man. Thankful for people tuning in to listen even after games like this, and having us be a place that you go to kind of process these type of losses. That's what we're trying to do. It's not fun. It's super fun for us either. Like I did kind of want to go into this break on a lighter note, but we can't. We don't play for the team, so we have no impact of how this all plays out. I do appreciate you staying up late here. I know you gotta catch an early flight tomorrow morning, but yeah, me and you will circle back in about a week. I'm sure I'll get you on early next week as well, and we'll talk about wherever this team is at that time. Yeah, so until Monday morning next week with Jace Frederick, he's Kyle, I'm Dane. Peace out.
How I'm feeling, man, I hope it never stop, yeah. Green and hard so you can find me in the crowd, yeah. Don't let standards ever bring you down, yeah.